All right. Feels good to be back. It's been a minute since I've been on. Oh man, it's been hectic. It's been crazy. I have a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. I don't know why I'm so giddy, man. I'm excited to be chatting with you guys again. And I'm just really excited about everything that's going to be happening next year for the Xbox, as well as just gaming in general. Um, So I wanna thank everybody stopping in. What's going on, Wolf Silver? Thank you. Appreciate you stopping in. If you're getting the feed and stuff like that, I hope that I'm not lagging. What's going on, Zach? Thank you, brother. I appreciate the welcome back. I hope I'm not lagging microphone wise. It seems my laptop is lagging a bit, and I'm hoping that it's coming through clear enough for you guys. What's going on, Showan? I got a lot to talk about, man. Some things you may like, some things you may not like, but there is much to discuss. So let's jump into today's super pod shot. What's going on, Ramon? Appreciate you. All right, cool. Here we go. Hey, Expedite, you're now rocking with your boy KOR X Kal-El, the last son of Planet Xbox, and you're listening to Super Pod Shots. Yeah, man. So there's a lot going on. A lot of people may not notice. Let's jump into the first topic. So, I happen to be surfing the web today, and I noticed, and this is not something new. This is not something that it was not like we didn't know this was going to happen. But Fanatec News, the makers of the racing wheels for both the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, recently had a sit down with Turn 10 and pretty much confirmed Forza Motorsport 7. Now, the coolest thing about this meeting that he had on his blog, or on the Fanatec blog, he talked about how he had a meeting with Turn 10 this week, and they would discuss several things that they could do together for their next Forza Motorsport title. And then he asked the fans of the steering wheel if they were interested in leaving any questions for him that he could ask them, that he would then go ahead and ask them. So an update recently came out, and the update stated he had a very good meeting with the team. He's happy to report that there is a good chance that a lot of things will change for the better in the next upcoming Forza Motorsport title. He goes on to state there is a new person who is responsible for physics and force feedback, and this is a wheel guy. He is a real racer with car engineering background and very familiar with PC sim racing. He also states the PC market seems very important for them, and they are aware that this market is dominated by wheel users. Therefore, we will intensify our cooperation and get the best out of the games for wheel users. Now, at first thought, you say to yourself, if you're an Xbox fan, if you're an Xbox gamer, your first thought is PC. They're focusing on PC again. But you know what, man? You can't be upset at it, because with Microsoft coming out with Scorpio next year, a lot of games automatically being converted over to Scorpio from Windows 10 PC. And I guarantee you, Forza Motorsport 7 will be 4K, 60 frames per second. That's going to be a good thing. I expect a lot of awesome things happening with this game. And the fact that they have a new physics person says a lot about their dedication to getting the sim racing part of Forza Motorsport as right as possible, bringing in a new person, as well as a person familiar with real racing for PC gamers. That can only mean that will also transfer over to the console market for console gamers. So for those of you out there who love racing with steering wheel, steering wheels, especially Fanatec steering wheels, you could expect a lot of good improvements in the next Forza Motorsport game. Now, me personally, I'm not a fan of Forza Motorsport. I'm not a fan of any sim racer nowadays. Back in the day, I used to be, but nowadays I don't have the patience or the time to get into it. And honestly, I'm not a car person, so I don't know much about cars. But I do love myself some Forza Horizon, which has been a very big successful game this holiday season, and a beautiful game as well. So look, Forza Motorsport 7 like it's going to be good. I see a lot of people complaining about another Forza game. And listen, as Xbox gamers, we know that these games alternate. It's not nothing new. We know we get Forza Motorsport one year, we get Forza Horizon another year. And in each instance, it's not like they review poorly. They always review really well. Forza Horizon being the cream of the crop for any console, any platform, including PC currently. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And I expect Forza Motorsport Sport 7 to be a much better game than 6. Better physics, obviously. You'll get that with your steering wheel feedback. They may finally include dynamic lighting. I'm hoping that the weather's dynamic also. Because listen, as a racer, if you're already doing 4K 60 on the Xbox One, I expect you to either improve on either the textures of the game or adding something dynamically to the game. And with 12 gigs of RAM and a possible new CPU, I would expect you to be capable of doing that. So I have big expectations for Forza Motorsport 7. And if you're a fan of Forza Motorsport 7, you should also have big expectations for their next game. I know that a lot of people get kind of upset because of the simple fact that the game is similar to the last game and it's another racing game and things. But some people made a great point in a forum that I happened to be in when I was checking it out. And in that particular forum, what was cool about it was the simple fact that they had spoke about how iteration every other year, even though each Forza is different. What made it similar to sports titles is that there's an iteration every year. And yet no one complains about MLB The Show. And yes, that is a baseball game, but the only thing you're really getting mainly is roster turnover, maybe improved graphics and things like that. Same thing with Madden, same thing with FIFA, and yet that sells millions and millions and millions. People don't look at racing games as a sports game, but it is a sports game. And that's why they kind of put it in that category with racing and sports. Though I still feel like racer should be its own category, I can respect that. So for those of you out there who feel like, hey, this is the same thing over and over every year, listen, if you have a studio that is churning out sports titles that are highly acclaimed every year, regardless of whether or not it sells 2 million, 3 million, 4, 5 million, is well received. People want it. There's a following for it. And you're pumping them out, and the production isn't going backwards, it's constantly improving. Yeah, you should be able to continue to keep pumping that out, especially for the fans if they're going to buy them. Now, if it's oversaturation, that's a possibility. I think there's a possibility with both that for Halo and Gears. It's one of the reasons why I always say I felt like at least those two studios need to have another franchise to alternate with, similar to Turn 10. So you don't get an oversaturation of the same game, even if it is a different take on that game. But at the same time, Forza Motorsport and Forza Horizon is just different enough where you can actually look at those games different. Two different circuit races, 160, 130. One is open world. The other one is a circuit. I didn't mean to say circuit the first time, sorry. But one of them is open world, one of them is circuit, and you're able to get your feed for whatever it is that you are into when it comes to racing. And there's a lot of people who just are not into motorsport, and a lot of people who just love Horizon, and vice versa. There's a lot of people who isn't into the arcade style of Horizon and really want that sim racer. And that's why, even though Gran Turismo may sell more than Forza, in some instances, Forza really kind of is the king of racing, at least when it comes to the ratings and things like that. It's been highly regarded and it's done really well. And you don't have to wait 10 years for the next one to come out. And that's no shot at Polyphony. I think Polyphony is an amazing studio. But clearly, I'm not sure if the time that they put in is always turns out to be as great as the last edition. And maybe that's a reason why people have gravitated towards Forza as of late more than they have Gran Turismo. But we'll see what sport, we'll see what direction they take with it, and we'll see how that all turns out. In any instance, I wish the best for Dan Greenwald and that team, and I look forward to what they have to show at the end of 2017, because that's when that game will be dropping as another holiday Microsoft exclusive, launching on Scorpio more than likely. So Capcom decided to come out today and talk about they want to focus on new IPs. Capcom, we've been begging you to focus on new IPs forever. It's like I'm dumbfounded by this sudden turnaround logic that Capcom wants to all of a sudden try to focus on new IPs when you've been churning out remasters and sequels for like the last 2.5, 3 years. You know what I'm saying? Like the last new IP they had was Dragon's Dogma. I can't even think of another new IP that they put out that's been successful. They totally abandoned the Lost Planet games, you know, which I wasn't a fan of in the first place, but at least it was different. At least it was something that was original. It was almost like Monster Hunter, but more westernized with guns and, you know, the little grappling hook, almost like Captain Commando, I think it is, or something like that, where, you know, you're using a grappling hook to scale things. There's no jump ability, and then you're fighting these giant beasts and these bugs and these, you know, monsters and things. I thought it was a really cool concept. I could just never get into it because it just always felt held back because of the limited ability. You ever notice how Capcom creates a game similar to like Resident Evil, and you can't walk if you want to reload? Now, I'm sure they've recently changed that, but prior to that, their old games always held you back and limited you in what it was that you wanted to do. And I always felt the function in Lost Planet in not having the ability to jump and grapple, to me, turned me away. It just completely turned me away, and it felt a little bit slow, so it just never was for me. Now, if they came out with a new one and they improved upon it, maybe we'll see what happens. But it's important for Capcom to finally get back to, you know, creating new IPs and bringing back some franchises I think that are worthy of being remade. You know, it's cool that you've had 1 billion Mega Mans of the original Mega Mans, but let's get a new Mega Man. Let's get a new Mega Man Legends. You know, let's get some new IPs coming in. Let's get a Dragon's Dogma on the next generation console. Will you ever release that game for PS4? I think it was called Deep Down. Will that game ever come out? That's a new IP. It's like, Capcom, what are you doing? And then you want people out there who are big supporters of Microsoft and felt Capcom was on the outs to purchase that company. And I'm sitting up here saying, why? Like, if you want to get something from a studio, just buy the games. Don't buy the studio, because you're taking on a burden and you're taking on the nonsense of that studio. Besides its debt, besides its issues, you're taking on a staff that hasn't been successful. You're going to have to let people go, rehire, you know, but you do get all the franchises and things like that. And I'm not sure if that's something that they should do. Crytek is another company that just let go. I don't know how many production companies under them. They just released, I don't know, I think it was like 132 people just got let go because Crytek once again is on the downside of things. Just sell Rise to Microsoft. Just sell it. I don't know why they're holding on to the franchise. It sold pretty well on the Xbox One. It feels like an Xbox One game, just like Titanfall felt like an Xbox One game. And it's unfortunate that Titanfall, you know, didn't sell the way it did because it was released between Call of Duty and Battlefield. But I also think if they sold that game in March on Xbox One exclusively like they did the first time, it would have sold way better than the first one on Xbox One. It would have sold a ton better because then you would have still been able to use Azure Clouds. It's not even the same type of game multiplayer-wise. It just really isn't. It doesn't feel the same multiplayer-wise. You know, there's no bots on the field. It doesn't feel as if you're in war like you did with the first game. And I think that's because you're catering to the multiplayer aspect, and then you hurt the Xbox aspect of it. And it's not to say that the multiplayer is not good. My understanding is that Titanfall 2 is the highest rated shooter this holiday season. More highly rated than Battlefield and more highly rated than Call of Duty. That says a lot, but the sales says otherwise. And I don't know what's going on with EA and Respawn. They've been on the outs here and there. You've seen Vince Zampella hop on Twitter and ran a little bit here and there about how he feels about the game and whether EA is going to support it. And, EA gives you their PR spiel about how they're going to support all the Titanfalls. And I don't know how long that relationship will last. But I do wish Respawn the best of luck, and I hope that their next game, if it's Titanfall 3 or something else, is a success, and they get back that spark they had with the Modern Warfare series. Moving on. So Capcom finally is, really trying to get back to what they used to be, and I'm not sure they had the talent to do it. I'm just not sure they have the talent to do it. They spend so much time making remasters of every Resident Evil, though the new Resident Evil VR looks spectacular and looks incredibly scary, especially in first person. I'm not sure they will have the talent to create new IP or have the talent to put out something fresh and something new. Now, that's not to say they can't do it. That's not to say they're not capable of doing it. It's not to say they're not capable of doing it, but it is something that you have to think about when it comes to Capcom. Guys, give me 1 second, please. Apologies. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you waiting for me as I took care of some things with my son. Yeah, so we'll see what happens with Capcom in the future, and I wish them the best of luck as well. Hopefully, they become a powerhouse like they used to be with the Devil May Cries and the Animushas and things like that. And they do create a new one. I hope it is multi-plat because that is a game that I did play on PS2, and I would love to play it on Xbox One. And I think a game like that, because Xbox fans do love action games. Ninja Gaiden says a lot about the Xbox fan base. Rai says a lot about the Xbox fan base when it comes to hack and slash games. I think Animusha would be a successful game on the platform if they were able to remake it or bring it back. And I would be incredibly excited about it. So recently, there's been a rumor about the Elite controller. And what's crazy about the Elite controller is that it came out of nowhere and it released, and man, it hit like a hurricane. The thing was a sellout at $150. It put Scuff on notice. It really did put Scuff on notice because I remember when I remember when I went to E3 and I was sitting there chatting with the Scuff guy. And I just remember sitting there talking to him, and I was like, he's like, yeah, because I was looking at his name tag. And I just remember sitting there saying to myself, oh, you were Scuff. And he's like, yeah. And he's all excited, looking for me to ask him questions. And I go, so how do you feel about Microsoft coming out with a controller that's $50 less than yours and probably better because it's actually made by Microsoft? I literally said this to this dude in front of his face at my first E3. And he literally looked at me like, F you, dude. Okay, F you. You know what I'm saying? That's the impression that I got when I was sitting there. And I was like, that's amazing that, and then you look at it now and they're the manufacturers of the controller. Now, I don't know how that happened and things like that, but more power to Scuff for working out a deal with Microsoft and becoming the official manufacturers of all Elite controllers. Now, if you bought an Elite controller, there's a rumor going around that they are actually going to release a new Elite controller that allows you to swap out the triggers. Now, that's a big deal. That is a big deal. If you can swap out the triggers now, both left bumper, right trigger, left trigger, that's a big deal. And I think that a lot of fans may be excited about that because now you have the opportunity to put certain types of triggers for certain types of games on there. Maybe something a little bit softer, maybe something that protrudes a little bit more out of the left and right R1, L1 buttons on top of the controller. And it kind of feels like it would suck for those out there who purchased the original Elite controller and felt satisfied with it. But if you haven't got one, you may be in luck for a new Elite controller and have one at the right time. Now, what happens to all those who purchased the Elite controller? I don't know. I don't know if those people will be upset. I don't know if those people will have some type of, Microsoft will come out with some type of trade-in program where you can trade in your wireless controller, your Elite controller, and pick up the new one or the newer version. But I just feel like this is something that they should have done from the jump. You know what I'm saying? It's like they should have did this from the jump. And what's crazy about it is I happen to be on Twitter. And I think I know his name. His name is Arnie something. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But Arnie is a developer, and he had developed the game. Oh my God, what is the name of that game? I can't remember the name of the game. It's that puzzle game. It was one of the first puzzle games that came out for Xbox One using Unreal Engine 4. We had an interview with him. And it's a very weird name because it's about a god that plays tricks on you, and you kind of got to like go through this puzzle or whatever. But he also is working on a shooter called 1942, which is a World War. I don't know why I said world that many times. It's a World War I or World War II type title. And what winds up happening is he got his hands on the PS4 controller. And Elite Dangerous takes advantage of the mouse pad and the trackpad and uses it, which gives you an advantage over the Xbox One controller. And I feel like, and I'm not trying to jump subjects, but I feel like there's a lot of things that happen with Xbox in comparison to Sony, where developers aren't taking advantage of what Microsoft has produced as far as their controller is concerned, or as far as their console is concerned, and taking more advantage of what Sony has produced. And I don't know if that's to favor the demographic because there's more gamers there. But if you have an Elite controller, why couldn't it be an Elite controller playlist for Elite Dangerous that has a ton of buttons or a ton of macros that you could use? And I don't get that concept if the PlayStation controller has a set of buttons that the Xbox One doesn't. That doesn't make sense to me, and those are usable. So it almost feels like, and it's the same thing. And the reason why I'm saying with consoles is because you have the Xbox One S, which I recently purchased, by the way. And I'm very happy to have one. It plays well. I love the way it looks. It's all beautiful. And you only have a handful of HDR games. And yet every game that's releasing is getting an HDR patch for the PS4 Pro. Now, I get it. I get that. Don't get me wrong. I understand it's a new console. It's more powerful. You're building for that console. You're doing a checkerboard rendering, or you're doing native 4K for certain games on PS4 Pro. But those games are getting the HDR support. And that HDR support is actually a lot bigger on the Pro than it is the Xbox One S. And the Xbox One S is limited in how many games is hitting it. And to me, third party is not taking advantage of that. And once again, that falls into who are the developers vying for? Are you doing this to cater to the larger fan base, or you're doing it because you just don't want to do it on the Xbox One? But it doesn't make sense to me, because I think if a game releases on the Pro and it has HDR, it should be no different than the game that releases on the S that has HDR. Absolutely not. And for that reason alone, I'm kind of disappointed in some of the third-party titles that have it or haven't upgraded it and don't have plans to do it. And I've been seeing that a lot lately. One of the games was Mass Effect, which completely blew me away with the talk that there is no plans for a Mass Effect Scorpio version currently. Yet, there is plans to update for the PS4 Pro. Now, don't sit here and tell me EA don't got some sort of, alpha dev kit on Scorpio, because Phil Spencer came out and said that there are dev kits out there to developers. Don't sit here and tell me they don't have a dev kit for Scorpio. For those people out there who believe Scorpio doesn't exist, you be a fool to think it doesn't exist and that Microsoft don't have games in development for their newest platform. So to hear BioWare, of all people, my favorite studio, by the way, my favorite, like there is no studio that I love more than BioWare. It used to be Square, but Square, I'm done with Square. But it used to be Square. Now it's BioWare, because I love the Star Wars Knights. I love KOTOR. I was a big Dragon Age fan, and I love Mass Effect. Those are my favorite franchises currently. And for them to tell me that I won't be able to get Mass Effect on Scorpio, that's a big deal. It makes me kind of upset. Now, obviously, that can change. It's definitely way too early to sit up here and really gripe about it. But the fact that it was brought up and the fact that it was said says something to me. It says that they've thought about it, and currently they have no plans for it. Yet, they've thought about the PS4 Pro and they have plans for it. I don't understand that. I don't get that. So, that's just my little gripe with that situation and HDR and how, what is hitting the Xbox, what's not hitting the Xbox, and how does that affect the gamers on the Xbox platform who may have gone out and bought a 4K TV for HDR and is only getting it in a handful of games. And I really hope that they are able to get more titles as the Pro gets more titles and both consoles benefit from HDR, because it's hard to boast about HDR if only your first party is getting it. And Microsoft is pumping out first party titles, but a lot of those titles release at the end of the year, and very few. And I don't mean as few as, they're not pumping out enough. Just only you might get 1 or 2 titles, 3 titles a year out of 12 months. Next year's a different story. There's a lot of exclusives dropping, a lot, and a lot of that is due to being pushed back. Scalebound is one of them. Crackdown's another. Sea of Thieves is another. All those games got delayed. So let's just keep it real. Those games got delayed. But at the end of the day, I would hope that every single one of those games has HDR support, and I would hope that every single one of those games will be Scorpio ready. And I would assume that they would, because if not, they would be doing a disservice to themselves as well as their fans. So I look forward to what's going on next year, and hopefully third parties will pick up with the S. Now, I want to give you my impressions on Final Fantasy 15. Okay, I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy. Obviously, you guys know I'm a big JRPG guy. I play a lot of JRPGs when I can. Of JRPGs on Xbox One. And I'm happy to announce, well, it's not to announce, obviously, it's already been announced. We've reported on TICGN.com, which I have some things to talk about at the end about that. And I know you guys will be pleased starting next month, that Valkyrie Revolution will be coming to Xbox One. Now, to me, that's a big deal. That is a big deal. And it says a lot. And I think that though Final Fantasy 15 sold a ton more on PS4, it sold extremely well on the Xbox One. Maybe 1 million, maybe 1.1 million. Even if it broke 1 million, if it broke anywhere near 1 million, that is a success. Do you understand how serious that is for an Xbox One Japanese RPG game to sell 1 million copies on the Xbox One? That's a big deal. That is a big deal. So I'm excited about that. And if they do bring Valkyrie Revolution, which they are actually, they already admitted they are, that's great. And I hope that it is met with the same. It probably won't be because Final Fantasy is such a mainstream game, but I hope that is met with the same success or close to the same success of Final Fantasy 15. Because I would love, I think that is something that is an action type RPG. And I think it's something that fans will enjoy because of the action RPG aspect of it. And if you get that, there's a possibility you may get more and more games of that ilk. So I'm looking forward to what they produce over the next couple of months. And I hope Square continues to bring more games. Now, I had this big rant on Square a couple weeks ago. You know, they're bringing next year the 30th anniversary of Final Fantasy to PlayStation. And they're literally releasing every Final Fantasy on PlayStation 4. 1 through 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I think 7 and 10 is already out, but they're supposed to be doing this anthology all on one disc, all these games on one disc. And I'm just sitting here saying to myself, why isn't the Xbox getting these games? Now, shout out to my boy Jez Cordon. Those of you who know my homie Jez from Windows Central, aka Xbox Mad Editor-in-Chief. Jez brought up a very good notion that it's a possibility that Sony may still own the licenses for a lot of those games that came out on a PlayStation 2. And for a second there, I would actually agree with him, except for the fact that 1 through 6 was on Super Nintendo. So what about Nintendo? Do they not get that? Do they not get that for Switch? Do they not have the capability of getting those first 6 games on their platform? You know, and I'm just sitting here saying to myself, this is crazy to me. You don't give Xbox fans 2.8, 2.5 for Kingdom Hearts. You give them 3. They have no idea what the story is. You give them 15, but you don't give them none of this anthology stuff. What if the fans were interested in it? What if the fans really wanted to know about Final Fantasy, finally, that you've introduced them to one that's very easy to play for those who have never played a Final Fantasy, and for those of us who are familiar with it, know how to take advantage of it and know how to build out characters to where we just knock everything out. It's a crazy concept to me. Crazy concept to me. But this is what Square does, and this is the reason why I'm seriously on the fence with Square. I'm seriously on the fence with Square. I really am. Now, my Final Fantasy 15 impressions are this. Some may like it, some may not. I think Final Fantasy 15 is a very fun game. It's very fun. I think that is a really good game. And on a scale of 1 to 10, I give it an 8.7. That's, to me, that's a very great score for Final Fantasy 15. I give it an 8.7 out of 10. Just because of the simple fact that they've introduced an open world Final Fantasy that I actually enjoy exploring, running into new creatures, and just fighting them. I didn't like initially I didn't like the leveling system in the Ascension system. I didn't like it because I'm so used to building characters the way I want them to be built that when they introduced this team dynamic where I focus a lot of my time into everyone else and how they work around me as a character, it was different. Then to turn around and focus on my character, and a lot of my abilities is just based on teleportation and defense, like phasing. And I didn't like that either. I didn't like it. I'm like, I don't understand. I couldn't increase my magic the way I wanted to. I couldn't increase the strength the way I wanted to. I couldn't build the characters the way I wanted to, but they're pretty much preset. Gladius is clearly your tank, your defensive person. Prompto is clearly your range character. Ignis is clearly your mage, your magic type character, if you build him correctly. And then you have Noctis, who is your all-around character. And to me, it just was like different. And it took me a second to take a step back to really look at the game and really see the game for what it is. And that's the reason why I gave it an 8.7, because I enjoy the way they have it set up. I really enjoy the food aspect of things. I listen, as someone who loves to cook, I truly enjoy that aspect of the game. Finding new, listen, I'm like stuttering over myself at this point because I normally would hate anything to do with cooking in a game. To me, this is one of the best things about the game is the chef stuff. It really is getting the ingredients, finding new recipes, seeing what type of bonus stats they give you, making a decision between going to a hotel, which can possibly give you triple or twice the XP, or 1.2 or 1.5, depending on where you stay, or camping and having a dinner and seeing this dish created and taking screenshots of it. It's cool. It's just cool. I'm nerding out at this point. You can't tell me it's not cool. Then to sit up there, you have Prompto taking pictures while you're battling. Every once in a while, you get a pretty good shot. You have Ignis with the recipes and everything like that, and then you get little points for traveling. It's a cool concept. I know a lot of people don't like it because it's not traditional Final Fantasy, but I really enjoy the game. At the same time, if I have to do one more fix a car, I'm going to lose my mind. The side quests are horrendous, absolutely terrible. Finding people on the side of the road, taking pictures, finding dog tags. Like, what are these quests? These quests don't even give you, like old Final Fantasy, you would get a quest and you would get like a new weapon or a new set of armor, like a bangle or something like that. You don't even get that. They give you a couple dollars of gil, and then you may get a recipe or you may get a bracelet if you get that. And really, it's only one guy that gives you that. So the side quests are terrible. Overall, I go out, I get these swords that I don't use. I literally don't use any of these swords that you get in the game. I don't use them at all. So it's just funny to me that they have these weapons in the game, and I don't use them. I just haven't. They drain energy from you when you use them and stuff. I don't use them. I just use the regular swords that I have. So it's definitely different. And it just seems like there are no ultimate weapons. You find them and then you level them up using Sid, and that's how you get ultimate weapons. So it's definitely different, but I find it extremely fun. I can't stop playing it. And I highly recommend it for anybody who wants to get into Final Fantasy 15. I highly recommend it because it's a really good game. So we're moving on. Finally. I just want to talk about some comments that Phil Spencer recently made on Twitter. Shout out to my man Phil Spencer. Shout out to the whole Microsoft team and executive team and things like that. Really grateful for all the support they've given me, all the support they've given Tick over the last couple of years, and the interviews that we've been able to conduct with them. I'm very happy that they've been doing that, and really proud of that. Give me 1 second. I see something I wasn't looking at before. I do apologize to the people in the chat. I did not know someone was in the chat harassing the chat, and I do apologize for that. Okay, so Phil Spencer came out, man, and he talked about new IP. And one of the things he's pretty much stating, and I'm not going to quote him quote for quote, but one of the things he came out and spoke about is how in order to get sequels, it's about balance and it's about sales. And currently, in his opinion, games must sell well in order for them to get a sequel. And the teams must be, I guess, available to do the games, followed by a balance of a particular game releasing at a particular time. And this is where we kind of bump heads a bit. It is not to say that Phil isn't right. Don't get me wrong. It is not to say that Phil is not right. Understand something. This is a business. And when it comes to business, it's super important that developers and publishers make money. Gaming is officially bigger than movies. And some games cost millions and millions of dollars, including marketing. So yes, you want to reap those benefits back. You want to get that money back. You want to be able to be in a positive, not in a negative. And if you look at what recently happened with some of the games that the Xbox platform had, as far as Quantum Break, Sunset Overdrive, you know, games like the Forza Motorsport 2, Forza Motorsport 6, like a Halo 5, even though Halo 5 sold extremely well, it didn't sell like a normal Halo would. Gears of War didn't sell like a normal Gears of War would. It's saying a lot about the demographic. And to me, what their focus should be. ReCore didn't sell well either. And that's partially because of the publisher, the developer, the quality of the game. And it's not to say the quality of the game is bad, but you launch with bugs and you launch with issues, and you have to fix those issues during the game. And if you launch like that, there's a strong possibility you may lose the gamer before you even get the gamers. And that's not good. At the same time, ReCore deserves a sequel. It deserves a sequel. It's one of the few franchises I can truly say Microsoft should not let go by the wayside. Absolutely not. You have a vast open world game. You don't have many of those. Microsoft does not have many of those where you're exploring a desert. Yes, it's a desert, but you're still exploring. Yes, there's dungeon crawling. Yes, those are things that people love, people adore. And you have a franchise that if you can get right on a second try, could really be something special. You can't let a game like that just go by the wayside. A game like Rise, though they don't own the franchise, I feel like they should throw everything they possibly can at that game financially until Crytek says yes. The game itself was not something that was a smashing hit out of the park, but it's another title you don't have in your library. You don't have that. And that's something that they really need to capture to get that franchise. And what I disagree with him isn't the fact that, yes, it takes sales for a game to sell. It's the fact that even if a game doesn't sell, there's certain things you just don't abandon because it doesn't sell. That's not good. You have this, listen. What I'm trying to explain to you is this. You have let's say, for example, you have Ico. Ico didn't sell very well on PlayStation 2. Shadow Colossus wasn't something that sold, hundreds of millions or something like that. It wasn't crazy, but, it was a niche following of people. And yet, the fan base is there. That's a diverse title that you can't get anywhere else but on PlayStation. It's different. I'm not a fan of the whole what's the name of that game? Like the Beyond Two Souls. I'm not a fan of the point and click game. But they have a game in Detroit Human or whatever it is called, Detroit Being Human or whatever it is called. Well, Two Human. And that is a title that shows a lot of interest to a lot of people. And even if it's niche, even if it doesn't sell anything, that continues to diversify your lineup. And it's not to say that Microsoft hasn't diversified their lineup. They have. The question is, can they keep the franchises that make their lineup diverse? We no longer have Fable currently. It's not to say that we won't see Fable next year at E3 or a new Fable 4 or a new Fable reboot, but we currently don't have Fable. So we don't have that Western RPG exclusive you would normally get. That is gone currently. So if you don't have that, you can't abandon certain franchises that you've developed for this generation because those games haven't sold. You need to be able to actually look at those games as a whole and think about the potential of what they will do and how you can correct the sequel. Knack is a perfect example of a game that didn't sell well because of whatever issues was it, but they have a part 2 coming out for PS4. ReCore to me is a title that needs to continue to be an IP that is explored with lore and new ways to play. And it is something that you wouldn't be able to get on Nintendo currently, and you wouldn't be able to get on PlayStation currently. You have a new protagonist with Jewel, and I just feel like, to me, that's a franchise you need to keep and you need to grow. If you can't get Rise, you don't own Sunset Overdrive, that's a franchise you need to keep and grow. There's a lot of smaller titles that Microsoft has. Cuphead, Max Cursor Brotherhood, but you no longer have that studio for Max Cursor Brotherhood. So what happens to Max as an IP? You look at games like We Happy Few, but that's just a publishing deal. There's a lot of things that I feel like Quantum Break is a title that could be really explored if done right. For whatever reason, I love the game, but for whatever reason, it didn't do well. It didn't sell well as a new IP. And that was a game that was really highly touted. It was really highly touted, and it needs to be explored. It does. And I get that. And this is why I say to myself, a lot of people go, oh, it doesn't matter if it's third party. And Phil said that himself. He said it doesn't really matter if it's first, second, or third party. It's all about the quality of the title. They're similar. And I feel like that's not true. Because if you look at first party, you can pump out a Halo, a Forza, a Gears. But you can't get Remedy and force them to pump out another Quantum Break if they're busy with another IP that may be multiplat. You can't do that. You don't own that studio to give them the push or to do it. You have to do it on their time. The same with Scalebound. This is my biggest gripe with third-party owned IPs. As much as I love the idea, because you don't have to pay for the studio, you don't have to pay for the production. You don't own the studio, so you go when the studio is ready. Lost Odyssey was released as a backwards compatible title, and Microsoft owns Lost Odyssey. They own the IP. They own the publishing rights to Lost Odyssey and Blue Dragon. I looked it up. You can look it up too. Google is your friend. However, in order for us to get a new Lost Odyssey, we'd have to wait for Miss Walker to want to do the IP. That's another IP lost that Microsoft has that could diversify their library even more, especially in a genre they are not big in. Lost Odyssey was damn near, if not the best, second, third, or fourth top 5 RPG of last generation. And yet we won't get a sequel to that franchise. We won't get that unless Miss Walker decides to do it. It's a reason why first party is important, because you can make them do the things you want them to do. But third party, you have to wait on them. You're on their time. When they're ready to do it, they'll do it. That's why you don't have another Alan Wake, even though Microsoft doesn't own the IP. If they did, you might have another Alan Wake already. As a lot of people want Alan Wake. Same thing with Lost Odyssey. Same thing with Blue Dragon. It took the thought of Gears, a franchise that made Microsoft $1 billion on 3 iterations before Judgment, and the thought of it going to PlayStation 4, for them to turn around and buy that franchise. And buy the franchise in order for them to do that. Now, I'm not trying to say Microsoft is all about money. That's not what I'm trying to say. But a business is a business, and you need money to make things work. At the same time, if you want to continue to diversify your library and continue to gather friends, gather new people, continue to grow your brand, continue to be a worldwide name instead of just being a Western name, you need to be able to get the games that continue to make people say, I can't get this anywhere else but Xbox or Windows 10. And to me, that's really important. That's really important. So I would love for them to continue with Recore. Even if it didn't sell, that's a game they need to read. They need to do a part 2 to. Quantum Break is something they maybe need to look at. Scalebound is another game that I am really hopeful for, and I really hope it's a very successful game just based on the fact that it's an action RPG. The fact that it's an action RPG, not saying it's similar to Final Fantasy 15, but I think about the success of Final Fantasy 15 and how that's an action RPG, and there's a lot of fans that picked it up on Xbox, that there's a possibility a lot of people may pick that up on Xbox for Scalebound. And to think that that's a 4-player co-op game, a lot of people don't even realize that. It's a 4-player co-op game with 4 dragons on the field at the same time. You can go through the whole game with 8 characters on screen at the same time. And if that game sells, if it sells well, When will we get a sequel? Do we get a sequel on Hideki's time? If Hideki don't block Xbox forever? You know what I'm saying? Whenever Hideki is ready to make another sequel to Scalebound, we have to wait for platinum. So that's what I'm saying. It's important that Microsoft continues to build first party and don't just focus on this, you know, not saying they focus on the same franchises. I don't think they are. A lot of people think they are, but those franchises sell. Halo sold what, 5 million more, maybe more. Forza continues to sell out of this world, and is very popular and critically acclaimed. And of course, you have Gears of War, which does extremely well in its own right, and is a big franchise in its own right. I thought it would do better this holiday, but you know, we'll see what happens and what numbers it ends up with. But at the same time, you have new IPs coming. Sea of Thieves is huge. Sea of Thieves is huge because it's a first-party title, and I really hope it's successful. That's the type of title Microsoft could build on. But I would love to see Rare make other things as well as rehash their IPs. Rare, to me, is probably the greatest studio Microsoft has. The greatest studio they have. And in my opinion, they really need to start looking at both old IP and new IP and break those studios up. God, we need a Cameo sequel. Give me a Cameo sequel. You know, it doesn't have to be too kiddie, but Cameo was an amazing launch title. Swapping between creatures for different instances, diversify the villains a bit, make the world bigger, more open. I would love a game like that as a platformer. You can bring back your Conkers. You could bring back your Banjo-Kazooies. Give us a kart racing game from Rare. Amazing Banjo-Kazooie kart racing. That would be great. You want to work with Nintendo, put Banjo in Smash? Do it. Maybe in return, they'll allow a Smash or some version of Smash on Xbox. I'm not saying that's a possibility. I'm just saying that you could always team up with Nintendo. You never know what Nintendo's doing. You never know. Nintendo is just out there right now. They're just out there. They're just like a kid lost in the world, walking around the street with a book bag and a thumb in their mouth. They don't know what the hell's going on besides Switch. And they're putting games on everything, iOS, phones, and tablets, and I don't know, whatever. But the long story short is that they have an amazing couple of franchises with Rare. Rare could remake Saberwolf into a true new IP. That would be huge for the Xbox fan base. So, you know, we'll see what happens with that, and hopefully they're able to diversify and go ahead and grab that and stuff like that. We'll see what happens. Give me 1 second, please.
Don't be giving her chips and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
She's not supposed to eat that stuff. I know you were eating it. That's why you're licking your mouth.
Yeah, apologies. So yeah, man, you know, I'm just saying that Microsoft needs to continue to do that. But I just feel like, I'm not saying that Phil is wrong. I'm just saying that I don't agree that it needs to sell and it needs to be a balance. I think sometimes you have to push the issue for that niche group. Because if you have a bunch of little games, if you have a bunch of games that small pockets of people like, those small pockets of people turn into a lot of sales. If you get what I'm saying, like, you understand what I'm saying? Like, you have a niche group of people that love a particular game, and you can only get that game on Xbox, right? But you continue to make these games that have these niche groups. That adds up over time. And then you have all these people that are buying this console or getting these games on Windows 10 because they can only get it on this console, or they can only get it on Windows 10 out of the Microsoft Store. And that continues to diversify your lineup even more and more and more. And it's funny that when PlayStation fans say Microsoft is not diverse enough, when they say Microsoft is not diverse enough, the problem isn't that Microsoft isn't diverse enough. The problem is that Microsoft doesn't have a lot of Japanese games. And for the PlayStation gamer, that is the diversity that they're looking for. But for the Xbox gamer, that may not be the diversity we're looking for. Only a few titles are really what we're looking for as far as the Japanese games are concerned. As far as diversity is concerned for the Xbox, what we truly want is something that's different from what we normally play. And to me, that's really important. And I hope that Phil listens, and if he doesn't listen to me, that he sees that there is a base that loves Recore. There's a base that loves Quantum Break. There's a base that wants Rise back. There's a base that's into Scalebound. There's a base that's excited for Sea of Thieves. And those games are continued on as AAA IPs for the Xbox One and continues to bolster their library. And they're not just one and dones. Because I would love to see those games on the next console after Scorpio. Or I would love to see sequels to those titles. And sometimes those games don't sell. Then it doesn't mean that they should be abandoned. And that's my point. That's my only point. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight. I'm very grateful for the support. I'm very grateful for everyone continuing to support Tick Podcast. I know we've been busy with everything and stuff like that, but you know, we got a lot of things happening over the next couple of weeks. New TICGN is coming up. We will have forums up for you guys. We will have a ranking system. When you leave comments, you'll get achievements. Rewards will be handing out for you when you level up or when you post comments or when you share. You'll be able to get all types of rewards. We're planning for that as well. The site is just going to be banging, man. We're really putting a lot of investment into it for the fans, and I'm so excited to show it to you guys in January. And make sure you continue to support Tick Podcast on YouTube as well as Apple, Google Play, and Windows. You can find us on any damn near podcast device, as well as on your Xbox with the podcast app. Just look up TIC Podcast and we'll pop up for sure. So once again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to today's show. Very grateful for the support as always. I will try to be back next week if my schedule permits it, and hopefully you guys will tune in as usual and support the brand. Keep in mind, Tickmas is coming up. We're doing giveaways. We are giving away an Xbox One S console. That won't be released until I think February, but you have an opportunity to go ahead and sign up for it. You can find it on Twitter. I will try to leave a link in the description and the description box in this podcast so you guys can sign up for it and things like that. If you sign up at TICGN, you'll get a lot of points in winning the Xbox One S 500 gigabyte console. Tickmas again is coming up as well. Right now we have Battlefield 1 giving away, Final Fantasy 15 giving away, Fury's being given away, Elder Scrolls Online is being given away, Overwatch is being given away, and we're not just doing Xbox this time around, we're doing PlayStation 4 as well in PC. So you guys tune in for that. We'll be giving that all the way on Christmas Eve. So make sure you tune in on Twitter as well as our Twitch stream to win those games. And that's it. That's it. So I want to thank everybody for support. I will try to be back next week as soon as I can. And if you missed this episode, make sure you check us out on iTunes and share with your friends. And please leave likes. Really important for us to grow the brand. We're continuing to diversify what we do as a network and continue to grow TICGN.com as a great destination for you to go get news, read, comment, and eventually next month, shall I say, in the new year, join our forums, make topics, get your ranks up, get achievement, get badges, and level up and get rewards, man. Get rewards. I'm so excited for next month. I'm working really hard, big money investments in the TICGN.com. So I can't wait to show it off. So thank you for your support. I'll be back next week. I'm your host, KLWarXKL, the last on the planet Xbox, and I'm off this planet. Peace.